Hello and welcome back. Christine E. Schulze here, aka the Elvish Author, and it's time for another chapter reaction, where we read the first chapters of books to you to help you discover something new that you might want to read, to help us discover something new that we might want to read, and to react and have a conversation about what we've read. But today, we are still continuing with kind of a special chapter reaction. Instead of reading a book that's new to us, well, it's new to him, we are continuing with my Legend of Zelda fan fiction called
Demon Queen.
Very good. Now, before we get started, I want to point out something, that today is a very special day because Isaac has, that's him, sorry, I didn't introduce you, did I?
I know who I am.
I didn't know by now. Isaac has, as of yesterday, received his first elf ears. In fact, let's get closer with that, shall we?
Get all in.
See? Well, very good. Look how nice that is. We went to the Renaissance Festival, so like they color them to match your skin tone and everything, which is very, very good.
Makes
so
me a more proper elf.
Yes. Look this way. Smile for the camera.
We're back.
So yeah. So now when I ask you guys to strap on your elf ears, he can truly and officially do so as well.
Yes, I can.
So, are you ready for this?
No.
Everybody, strap on your elf ears and get ready to listen to, where are we at again?
Chapter
9 of Demon Queen. Now, quick recap. What's about to go down? What just went down? Do you remember?
Oh man, so much went down.
So much to go down.
Well, the big thing that happened is that they're decided to go to the castle.
Yeah.
To get the spirit stones to get the Triforce.
It sounds like a horrible life decision.
It's such a bad idea.
It sounds like Ghirahim being overambitious and overreaching once again. He again has still kind of ostracized Kataki, which didn't make Kome too happy. But they're also going on this plan together, hoping to seize the throne, seize power. The princess was just born, so they're hoping that will be a nice distraction for them to go in and take care of some of this stuff. And also, what was the other thing that happened with him and Sakura?
You mean like the thing that happened?
Well, after that.
Oh, no, she might be pregnant.
Sakura thinks she might be pregnant, even though they had sex literally 2 days ago for the first time ever. But Sakura has strangely known things and been kind of intuitive throughout this thing, so who knows what she's playing at. But yeah, we're going to jump into it. As I was telling Isaac earlier, I believe that this chapter will have a good deal of action going on as they are stealing into the Temple of Time, trying to get these spiritual stones. Again, they're doing that because Ghirahim feels like even though he now knows how to open the portal to summon his armies, if he does that, he's pretty sure Demise will come after him. So he's trying to get a leg up and get some power before he even, goes that route. Which is smart, but trying to steal the Triforce, probably not smart. So, but yeah, let's jump into it and find out what's happening on Chapter 9 of Demon Queen. Ghirahim stood with the host of Gerudo Kome had gathered at the entrance to the training grounds. While a few of the Gerudo wore the common purple garb, most were clad in a shade of pink that mimicked the blush of sunset just beginning to paint the sky. The elite, Kome called them, her most skilled and lethal warriors. None of them wore a single shred of armor save a breastplate covering their hearts. But rumor had it that the reach of their sword was so long that further protection was unnecessary and would only slow them down besides. In addition, Kome had chosen several of her best archers. Ghirahim had no recollection of seeing any of them that first day in Hyrule Town Market and wondered why. The Sheikah were arrogant fools, but their skills and prowess with the bow were nothing with which to trifle. Kome marched toward them, white and golden silks, golden breastplates, boots, and gauntlets all shimmering in the sun, dazzling as if she was made of flame. The usual sternness shone in her eyes. As she met Ghirahim's gaze, a hint of worry glinted there as well. "Are we ready to depart?" she asked. "Your sister," Ghirahim said. "Where is Katake?" "She has fallen ill." "Her magic may be needed. Who knows what tricks the Shiko have prepared for us? They are no fools. They know now is a prime time to attack." "I understand, my lord," Kome said, a sneer tinging her voice. but I would not sacrifice my sister to those Sheikah dogs, even to please you. Punish me if you like. Kill me. But she is, at present, too weak to defend herself. I will not send her. Can you not heal her? Kome's frown deepened, as did the irritation filling her face. Were you not eager to depart? You know it takes several hours to reach the town. Can you not heal her? No. I am a fire mage, not a healer. The fever must run its course. Where did the sudden illness spring from? Are there others who are ill? You asked many questions for a man who insisted we be on such a hurried mission. I don't know where she contracted the illness. Perhaps you gave it to her. Perhaps it is some sort of curse. How dare you, insolent girl! Ghirahim stepped forward, hand raised back. Energy pulsed through his body, transforming into magic that lingered right beneath his skin. Kome didn't move a muscle, only continued to glare up at him, and the meaning in her gaze spoke truth. He wouldn't harm her. Quarreling with the sisters now would be pointless. If he ever needed allies, it was now. Lowering his hand and heaving a great sigh, he snarled, Show her to me. My lord, the time. I am well aware of the time. Show her to me, and then we may go. Kome stayed him a few moments more. Then, after a single nod at him, she turned to the Gerudo and said, Wait here. We will return shortly and from there depart to our mission. Kome led Ghirahim back toward the fortress. As they wove through its shadowed halls, she said, This had best not take long. I will not place my women in danger because of your delays. The celebration will last more than a mere couple of hours, Ghirahim said. I think we can both guess that. We've plenty of time. Kome led him in silence the rest of the way. They finally came to a door a few halls down from Kome's chambers. Kome knocked lightly, then slipped inside, motioning for Ghirahim to do the same. Within, Kataki lay on her giant canopy bed, muttering, moaning, tossing restlessly. A Hylian maiden pressed a wet cloth to her forehead, while another tended the fire. Fear illuminated Kome's gaze as it fell upon her sister. Ghirahim wandered over and watched Katake. A thick sweat drenched her body, shining in the firelight like drops of blood. The girl was lost deep in a restless sleep, assailed by some sort of nightmare. He pressed his hand to her forehead, but quickly recoiled. She is on fire, Ghirahim said, glancing up at Kome. I have no great care for her, but I understand how you humans care for your blood. If you would rather tend her, I can lead the Gerudo. No, Kome said firmly. I have seen this sort of fever before. Katake is strong. Her ice magic will help. God's willing, she will heal. I am loath to leave my sister, yes, but I will not leave the fates of the elite in your hands either. You made quite the fuss about needing my magic, and you're quite right. Someone needs to be able to defend the Gerudo, should things go awry for us. Come, the sooner we leave, the sooner may we return to her. She placed a hand on Kataki's shoulder, gave her a tender glance. Then, she stole from the room. Ghirahim followed. Back at the training grounds, they entered and passed through the rightmost door. Kome and the elite walked through what appeared to be a solid wall, but as Ghirahim followed suit, it felt no different than walking through open air. Beyond the secret wall, a series of passages delved down, deep beneath the fortress. At first, emblazoned torches led their way. After a time, the torches ceased, and Kome instead created floating orbs of flame to light their path. The hours passed like many long days to Ghirahim. If he'd had a heart, it would have thundered more and more with each step they took closer to their goal. As it was, he could feel a magical tension building inside him, flowing through every inch of him down to the tips of his fingers and toes. After a time, torches lined the walls again, and Kome announced they were beneath the city. A little further, and she stopped their party and said, Well, Lord Ghirahim, I shall let you do the honors. The town is directly above us. Peek out and see what we are up against. Kome nodded to the ceiling directly above her. Ghirahim walked over and looked up. A square of the ceiling was slightly discolored. Reaching up, he pushed and pried till at last the tile slid aside. Then, jumping up, he pulled himself through the opening and peered about his surroundings. They had landed right smack dab in the middle of the town square. Not a soul stirred for as far as he could see. Storm clouds approached overhead. A hint of lightning flared in their dark billows. Over the wall and in the distance, fireworks blazed in an array of colors above the castle, glistening and whirling like streamers. Music echoed ever so faintly from that direction. No sound could be detected in the town itself, save the bark of a stray dog. Jumping back down, Ghirahim said to Kome, All clear. No signs of life up there, whatsoever. Kome nodded. Good. We seal the doorway. We go a little further, right into the temple itself. Ghirahim closed the secret passage, and on they trekked, till Kome stopped them again and said, "Right above here. Gerudo, arm yourselves. If no battles will await us here, then both the royal family and the Sheikah are bigger fools than ever I could have imagined." "I will go first again," Ghirahim said. "Make them think I have come alone. That way, if there is an attack, we can surprise them with our own retaliation." Kome nodded. "We will not be far behind to defend you." Ghirahim glanced up. Exhilaration surged through him like the looming storm's lightning. As ever, he had to repress this thrill to keep it from manifesting his magic that would collapse the entire tunnel. He reached up and shoved the heavy stone tile aside with as great an ease as one blows away a feather. Magic at the ready, and sword at his side, he leapt up through the secret doorway in a single bound. Silence drowned him on every side. Not just an absence of noise, but a dreadful absence of the precious gems he had fought so hard to achieve. He circled the stone altar. He soared up, scanning the stained glass windows for any sign that they might have been hidden within the colorful panes. Nothing. He landed before the altar, glaring with hate at its emptiness, still as a grave. Where are they? "Is it safe, my lord?" Kome called up. "That would depend. As long as you mean no harm is against us, we would mean no harm against you." Ghirahim whirled and flung a ring of fire at the woman whose familiar cursed voice broke the silence with all the displeasure of nails scraped across glass. Impa. The flaming lasso coiled around her, hissing and squeezing the life out of her. The scream that fell from her lips soon morphed into a determined yell, and the next moment, a bright light shielded her from their view. A loud clap thundered, and Ghirahim almost worried she had found some way to harness the power of the storm clouds brewing outside. Then the light faded, and Impa stood free from her bonds. Her fist clenched, and her breathing came in quick, ragged gasps. A stench rose from the raised red welts on her arms. Despite the pain shining clearly from her gaze, she lifted her chin and straightened herself proudly. "I don't know yet whether to praise you or to kill you," Ghirahim said. "I might be inclined to do both, in that order. You're certainly one of the most determined rivals I've ever faced. I might be inclined also to spare you your deserved death, if you would kindly tell me where the spiritual stones have disappeared to." "They were removed," Impa said. "A prophecy was made long ago about the birth of Her Majesty, Princess Zelda, and what her destiny would hold in store. Many strange happenings have beset the castle as of late, not to mention your own bloodthirst and power lust. The stones have been scattered across the land, and trusted to those who can properly care for and keep their powers safe and secret." "Zelda," Ghirahim muttered beneath his breath. The insolent breath had been reborn, just as his master had declared long ago. In his first battle against the sage and her hero, the Demon King had promised that the cycle of good against evil would repeat itself for all eternity. Now, at long last, it started anew. Uneasiness flitted through Ghirahim. He hadn't expected this turn in events. The coming of a princess of destiny meant the coming of the hero, and of his own master reincarnated. Had his master known? Had his master known that he sent Ghirahim to a time when he might be reborn? So that, even should Ghirahim fail, his master would still have a way to triumph? Or is that why Ghirahim was meant to be here in the first place, to set that cycle in motion? In refusing to resurrect his master, perhaps the cycle would be broken before it was given roots to begin anew. Perhaps it might even be broken for good, his master's threat annihilated for all time. There was no way to really know. Now, more than ever, time was of the essence. The sooner he secured the stones, the sooner he would know that he was free from his master's power and wrath, whatever fate might beset him. I'm going to pause here real quickly, because you said, You were intrigued by something? Care to share?
No, I think I mentioned in a previous video how I thought that if Sakura is actually pregnant, that she might be pregnant with Ganon.
Like the reincarnated Ganon, like the next cycle?
Ganon, and him saying that maybe he's here to start the cycle again.
Yeah.
I
think that's a good theory. Yeah. But I think that you actually said, when I mentioned the 3 spiritual stones being scattered.
Yeah, and then that too, just thinking about since I played Ocarina,
like
they were already scattered at that point.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of like my made up backstory for how Ghirahim's influencing some things here. Fun times. Let's move on, shall we? "You seem lost, deep in thought, Lord Demon," Impa said. "Rupees for your thoughts." Ghirahim narrowed his gaze at the arrogant warrior woman. "Where were the stones removed to?" "Really," Impa smirked. "For one of your intelligence, I wouldn't expect such a careless question. They were removed so that the likes of you, who would wish Hyrule harm, could not know how to find them. Why then would I tell you their location? I will find them, Ghirahim said. I will find them and bring all Hyrule to its knees. Hyrule, my master, those meddling sorceresses, all of you will rue the day you underestimated me. The gods forbid such a day will come, Impa said, but should it ever, know that we Sheikah, defenders of his and her majesty, will fight to the death to save them, if indeed it must come to that. But speaking of the sorceresses, where are your friends? It sounded a moment ago as though at least one of them had come to defend you. Ghirahim stepped back toward the secret passage. He peered down into the hole. An empty blackness stared back up at him. Ah, did they abandon you, Lord Demon? Ghirahim glared at her, wanting nothing more than to strangle the vicious sneer from her face. You see, she continued, I know you don't understand this. Perhaps you can't. But for us mortals, the importance of blood and family runs deep. You didn't really think that, in the end, even a power-hungry witch like Kome would risk her life, and those of her people, for you. Power-hungry, Ghirahim scoffed. I practically had to beg to drag her into this plan. So she wants you to think, Impa said. Trust me, she hasn't been raiding our town for mere rupees and lovers and slaves all this time. Ghirahim studied Impa closely, trying to decipher whether she was bluffing, trying to pit him against Kome by making up lies. It was hard to tell. Neither truth nor lie wrote itself as plainly on her face as it did Sakura's. I said I wouldn't kill you, but for one thing, I find your response most unsatisfactory. And for another, I learned long ago that sparing the life of my enemies, even the most seemingly harmless mortal, can prove a fatal thread. I have worked too hard to allow such a thread to unravel my plans by the very seams. And so, I must kill you, however unpleasant that may seem. You may kill me, Impa said. A Sheikah does not fear death, especially not a death by honor. But you will first have to catch me, if you can. Impa sprang into the air, catapulting herself from wall to wall. Drawing his rapier, Ghirahim flew after her. From wall, to ceiling to floor, to wall again, they pinged like a child's bouncing ball gone berserk. Ghirahim flung fiery darts, whips made of flame, and tendrils of dark energy, while Impa harnessed the power of her shadows, hurling a myriad of magic attacks at him. Both warriors were masters at dodging, but the more their magic impacted within the temple itself, the more its sturdy stones began to crumble and fall away. Suddenly, a wave of fire from Ghirahim collided with Impa's shadow and slammed into one of the highest corners. The temple rumbled, and rocks shook from the ceiling, raining down like massive hail. Ghirahim and Impa flew wildly about the temple, dodging them. Ah! Ghirahim hovered against one wall and watched as Impa was slammed into the floor, her cloak wrapped around the large chunk of stone that had dragged her down. She pushed herself onto her knees and inhaled sharply. Clutching at a gash on her knee that poured blood freely, she lifted her free hand, creating an umbrella of light that the remainder of falling debris bounced off as easily as raindrops bouncing off a rooftop. When the quaking had ceased, Ghirahim flew down and danced toward Impa, who pulled at her cloak to no avail. Ghirahim flung a boomerang of fire that ripped through the fabric, freeing Impa, who looked up, bewildered. Ghirahim raised his rapier, dancing his fingertips along the blade and relishing its cold, merciless steel. Draw your sword, Impa, and let's finish this, warrior to warrior. You know, he just said he wasn't going to make the same mistake like he did with Link in sparing him. He could have just killed her while she was trapped, but he wants the fanfare. He wants the drama. He wants the satisfaction of, like, having that battle to battle, but, like, bro, like, you just let her go again.
I think that asking you if you think, but he has some honor, though? Because she just said battling him in honor because they're not afraid of death.
The question if Ghirahim has any honor?
Yeah.
I can't answer that for you. I can't give my spoilers. But anyway.
He's mistake here, but
let's see here.
He's fighting her honorably.
Well, he also has a will of his own, which he's technically not really supposed to. He's only supposed to care about the will of his master. So it's possible he has some honor, but you know.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, if my voice cuts out at all, I am having all kinds of weird allergy stuff going on today. So please do pardon. Let's continue, shall we? Draw your sword, Impa, and let's finish this, warrior to warrior. I think we both know how it would end. For all my magic, yours is the stronger. Ghirahim tilted his head. So you would surrender. Impa stared him straight in the eye. No, Lord Demon, I will never surrender. Indeed, I have hardly begun to fight. With one hand, she drew her sword. She lifted the other, placed her fingers to her lips, and whistled an eerie melody. Dozens of bright lights flooded the room, followed by silver and purple streamers, sparkling like the fireworks outside. The lights and colors faded to reveal no less than 3 dozen Sheikah, lined in ranks behind Impa, poised and ready to fight. Impa herself had stood her feet, sword clutched tightly in one hand. "See there, Lord Demon," Impa said. "How strong is the bond of blood? Where is your defense? Have they abandoned you so easily in the threat of defeat?" Ghirahim kept his gaze locked steadily on hers. His impulse said to cast a wild glance about the room, hoping that the Gerudo would appear out of thin air, but it was clear that Kome had abandoned him. For all he knew, she had gone so far in deceiving him by making some deal with the Sheikah to lead him into their grasp. He could not appear weak in front of his enemy, especially not one as determined as Impa. "Sheikah," she commanded, "this creature would steal the spiritual stones for his own, as well as the royal throne. Join with me. Protect the royal family. Protect our new princess. Send him back to the dark realm from which he came. For the Princess Zelda! For Zelda!" The Sheikah flew at him from all sides, some with swords at the ready, others throwing beams of both light and shadow at him. Ghirahim flitted around the temple, soaring from wall to wall, corner to corner, fleeing fire. Cries of pain told him when his fire met its mark. He zipped across the temple, never slowing, thanking whatever gods for his keen demon sight. No mortal would have been able to see so many blurs of so many enemies bombarding from all sides, let alone navigate through them. Ghirahim steered his way through the whirlwind of Sheikah, all the while chanting a spell, an ancient trick his master had taught him long ago. Finally, the chant completed, Ghirahim flung another volley of fire in all directions. The fires transformed mid-air and took shape till a dozen doppelgangers flew about the room, pursuing and dodging the Sheikah. Several Sheikah cried out in alarm, or to warn their fellow warriors. The shadow Ghirahims flew against the Sheikah. The real Ghirahim flew to one of the corners and braced himself there, searching. Impa stood on the floor, scanning the whirlwind of Sheikah and demons. She was looking for him. He could sense her determined malice even from across the room. "They're not real," she called up. "If you spear them with your sword and they don't bleed, they're not real. Use your light magic." Ghirahim's fiery whip wrapped around Impa, and he yanked her toward him. He swung his rapier, and she just managed to block with her sword. Cowering on the ground as the flames tore into the tender flesh of her ankle, she blocked his sword blows while muttering something beneath her breath. The blazing whip soon turned to white light before vanishing. The stench of burning flesh lingered, and Impa stumbled to her feet, still engaging their sword duel. Soon enough, more Sheikah had joined the fray. Thanks to Impa's insight, their light magic dissolved his doppelgangers as easily as if someone pinched the flame of a candle into a wisp of smoke. The Sheikah saw through his trick and now rallied to their leader. In moments, the rest of his shadows had been snuffed out, and the Sheikah caged him, some circling him, others hovering above him to create an impenetrable dome. Shadow magic assailed him from all sides, while Impa fought him with the sword. Suddenly, she spun about, and the tip of her blade cut into his side, making him fall to his knees with a yell. Blood oozed between his fingers, and he stumbled to his feet, only to be knocked back to his knees as something thick and black coiled around his leg. A whip of some sort, braided from the Sheikah's shadow magic. More tendrils of shadow shot out, chaining his arms, legs, ankles, wrists. One even wrapped around his neck, choking him. He lunged, pulled, yanked, but the bonds only tightened. His vision blurred as the shadowy noose squeezed. He started to mutter a counterspell, but another whip stung harshly across his cheek, knocking the words from his mind. Glass exploded. The window shards sparkled like colorful bits of rain as they fell alongside the flames, descending and knocking many of the Sheikah from the air. As more fire streaked through the air, Ghirahim realized they were flaming arrows and looked up. Gerudo archers stood on the sills of the shadowed windows, readying another round of arrows. The tips blazed to life with flames just before being released. More Sheikah fell. Impa shouted an order to flee the temple, but as the Sheikah flew up toward the windows, they were knocked down by more of the archers' fire. The doors to the temple burst open. Kome rushed inside, leading her elite who had each drawn 2 curved swords, wielding them as gracefully as though the blades had become extensions of their arms. Kome flung her arms wide, and flames sprang to life along the blade's curves. As the elite spun through the air, tiny darts of fire flung in all directions, piercing the Sheikah and sending them reeling. A loud whistle made Ghirahim turn his sights back to Impa. At her musical command, the Sheikah band together mid-air, raising a massive shield of light over their heads while continuing to fight. Fire and shadow flew, slamming into the walls and ceiling, making more stones come tumbling down. The magic attacks landed atop the Sheikah's canopy of light, sparing those below from being crushed. While fire and shadow raged between them and the archers in the windows, the elite battled the remaining Sheikah below. Ghirahim pulled at the shadowy bonds yet restraining him. Some of the Sheikah holding him captive had fled to join the others above, but many still held him in check. Impa walked toward him, a smirk curling on her lips and filling her triumphant gaze. As she neared him, she raised her blade high, ready to deliver the final blow. Ghirahim strained even harder. He could not be sent back to the Dark Realm. Not yet. His master's enraged face could not be the next and last face he saw before being charged with whatever punishment demise would have created for him. A whirlwind of flame twisted through the air, knocking Impa off her feet. As it landed, Ghirahim saw Komi standing in the midst of the flames surrounding her. They danced along her skin and waved from her hair without stabbing her in the least. She spun about again, and her flaming sword cut through his shadowy bonds one by one until at last he sprang up, free once more, and grabbed his rapier. Komi surged at Impa, whirling about, her sword spitting fire in all directions. Impa jumped and dove, lithely missing each attack. Impa then raised her hand, and several tendrils of long dark shadow grew from her palm. Clutching them tight, she cracked the whip on Komi's heels as they began a dance of cat and mouse. Ghirahim pursued, sending volleys of fiery darts at Impa, who managed to dodge them in between Komi's fire. Suddenly, one of the darts struck Impa's leg, making her reel forward. As she fell, the whip snapped out and hit Komi, who flew back through the air against the wall. Ghirahim glanced in her direction. She was fine. She was already standing to her feet, then leapt over to stand over Impa. She pulled the dart from her leg with a cry, tried to stand, but then collapsed back down. Ghirahim cast more darts that nailed her by her cloak to the ground. While she strained against them, he grinned and said, "This isn't how I wanted to see you die, cowering and helpless. But now that it comes to it, I find it to be strangely as satisfactory as any other death I would have delivered to you." Shadow tendrils burst from Impa's hand, knocking Ghirahim's sword to the ground. He darted for it, but the whip caught his wrist, holding him in check. Impa pulled, forcing him to his knees beside her. "You murdered Itzel!" She glared him straight in the eye. Her breathing grew heavy as the poison from his dart gripped her in its hold. "I cared for him above all others, even the royal family. I would have dishonored myself to save him had it come to that. You care about her as much as I did Itzel, at least, and as much as you are capable of caring for anyone or anything." Ghirahim shook his head. "Foolish girl! For that you Sheikah are meant to see beyond, to see the truth in all things. You see little. She means as little to me as any of your Sheikah. She is a mere pawn." "I do not refer to the fire sorceress, nor the ice sorceress. There is another, one you have come to hold dear despite yourself. Just like Itzel, she is an innocent, and just like Itzel, she will die fighting for what she believes in, and what she believes in, however foolishly, is you. You will be her downfall." Secura's face flashed before Ghirahim. Her lips parted with her final breath. As the light faded from her eyes, he chanted desperately, but even his darkest rituals could not revive her. For all his power, the gift of restoring life from death would never be his to harness, as long as the power of the gods lay hidden. With a roar, Ghirahim cast a ball of flame that freed him and slammed Impa against the wall. She slouched down, seemingly stunned. Then she glanced up with a smirk, placed her fingers to her lips, and whistled a different tune than before. The Sheikah dispersed. Their massive shield of light shattered, and the massive fire and stone it had been holding back was released. The Jurido's screams pierced the air one moment, and the next, silence shook the temple as they were buried beneath the fallen mountain of burning rubble. Komi released a wail of anger before commanding the remaining Gerudo back toward the secret door. Steadily, they made their way back, all the while battling with swords and magic. Ghirahim was the last to jump in, just as a final quake brought the rest of the roof crashing down. His last sight was of Impa still slouched against the wall, gasping for air but managing to grin at him, before his vision of her was blinded by tumbling fire and debris. He prayed for the rocks to crush her before delving below ground and shutting the door behind them. Thoughts on that little section there?
No.
What do you think of Impa's declaration?
I don't know how Impa knows about Sakura.
Well, because Ghirahim says that Sheikah can see the truth in all things. So, the Sheikah symbol is the lens of truth, right? So kind of like in this version, like the Sheikah, it kind of seems like Impa has maybe some kind of prophetic gifts. She can kind of see, she just kind of has this intuition where she kind of knows about Sakura. Maybe she can, maybe not read his thoughts, but maybe, kind of just sense things and sense his emotions and things like that. But yeah, what do you think? Do you think that this is a prophecy? Do you think Impa is just trying to piss him off? What do you think here?
Maybe a little both.
Maybe a little bit of both, yeah. But yeah, so
okay,
it's an interesting bit.
That makes more sense.
That
I guess
you probably didn't see coming. So
I didn't see that about the Sheikah.
Yeah.
Being able to do that.
So anyway, Anyway. Maybe it's not all the Sheikah too. Maybe some of them have that gift, So only as darkness engulfed them did the truth of what had just happened dawn on him. They had obtained no spiritual stones. Well, who saw that coming? Alright. No knowledge of where to find them. They were no closer to fulfilling his plan. Indeed, they were leagues further away from it. The cycle of good and evil prepared to repeat itself. His master would return to this world one way or another, with or without his aid, at any given moment. Ghirahim shoved ahead and led the way, snapping at the Gerudo to hurry up. "My lord," Kome said, her voice devoid of any feeling. "The Gerudo fought valiantly to save your life. Many are injured and weary. There is no need to rush them." Ghirahim whirled, flew through the air, and grabbed Kome by the throat. He pinned her hard against the wall, ignoring the cries of anger and the sight of many elites surrounding him, swords poised. "There is every need," he hissed. "Every need. Do you understand?" For the first time, absolute fear filled her face as she looked at him, saw just how tangible his wrath was in that moment. She nodded slowly. Ghirahim released her and led the Gerudo back through the underground passages. He marched in silence, focusing on placing one foot in front of the other, in front of the other, in front of the other. Such mindless routine was the only thing that could stem the nightmares of his master in pain and punishment and secure his lifeless face from leaping into the forefront of his conscience. Even then, they lingered on the fringes, ready to consume him at his first glance of weakness. May the gods curse that bitch Impa for placing them in his mind to begin with. May she die and rot in the dark realm and be consumed by the undead for all eternity. As soon as they breached the fortress's corridors, Ghirahim threw a glance over his shoulder, met Kome's gaze, and barked, "Meet me in your chambers. We must make new plans at once." Kome's lips parted, and the doubt and weariness in her gaze told him she planned to protest. But as her gaze lingered on his, she instead gave orders of her own. "Elite, take the injured to the healers. You fought well. All of you rest now and recover. I grant you a day of rest from your training tomorrow. Lord Ghirahim." She nodded at him as they came to a fork in the path. He followed her to the right, while the rest of the Gerudo delved down the leftmost slope. Up and up, Ghirahim and Kome climbed until they emerged into one of the fortress's more familiar hallways, lined with gold-gilt torches, paintings of the sun goddess, and tapestries of purple and gold thread, the hall leading to Kome's chambers. They had taken a shortcut. Whether Kome had sympathy for Ghirahim's plight, or just concern for her own life, Ghirahim didn't care. Being just a few steps closer to privacy, to a chance to make fresh plans and try again, set his nerves just a little bit more at ease. Once inside her chambers, Kome shut and locked the door behind them. Immediately, Ghirahim said, "The Sheikah have hidden the stones across the realm. Our next matter of business must be to find them." Kome met Ghirahim's gaze with one of fire. Her earlier fear vanished. She looked on the brink of exploding in anger, yet she said nothing. "Now of all times, would you show caution in speaking your mind to me?" Ghirahim tempted. "Pardon, my lord, but speaking my mind only hours ago nearly cost me my life, and that of my sisters." "Fair enough," Ghirahim said. "I can forgive your insolence considering your grief. Things did not go as I would have intended. My temper can get the best of me at times. I had not behaved myself in a manner befitting a lord and gentleman of my title. But now is not the time for such quarrels, such petty disagreements. Time is of the essence. We must find the stones." "Why?" Kome said bluntly. "Tonight was a near disaster. My Gerudo could have easily been slaughtered. Indeed, half of them were. As could have I. Why need we risk our lives for these stones? With the great armies you speak of, the ones you mean to summon, is that not more than enough power to take the king's throne?" "The human king's throne, yes. But my master..." Fresh fear triggered the nightmares to the front and center of his mind. Ghirahim saw his master before his eyes. He felt himself infused inside the giant black metal blade, being thrust at the hero of legend over and over again, quaking head to toe with pain as blow against blow was struck against him with the master's sword. He felt himself trapped inside the cold metal, unable to so much as scream to find some relief, unable to pass out, unable to do anything. His master empowered the blade with a fire that blazed higher than any flame the witches could produce. Ghirahim again wanted to scream from the pain, but locked inside the blade, he could cry out neither in agony nor for help. "Lord Ghirahim!" Kataki's shriek jerked Ghirahim back to the present, as did the loud explosion of splintering wood as she burst through the door and collapsed before him. She grappled at his feet, sobbing violently. Ghirahim flung a wild look at Kome, who looked equally bewildered, and then at the door. She had blown the handle clean off, with bits of ice sheathing the hole left in its wake. "Forgive me," Kataki sobbed. Forgive me, my lord. Kataki, what in the great goddess's name are you blathering on about? You look inside like a woman who's seen death himself come to court her. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. Kataki sobbed anew. She wailed and blubbered, the words indecipherable. Sister, what's going on? Komei hurried over and fell by Kataki's side. No sooner had she wrapped her arms around her than Kataki clasped against her shoulder, crying harder. Do not coddle her like some newly born babe, Ghirahim snapped. That's her entire problem to begin with. The source of her weakness. Just as the source of yours lies in always choosing to care for and control her. Komei glared up at him, but he only knelt, took Kataki by the arms, and yanked her to her feet. Sweat drenched her body, but her skin was surprisingly cool to the touch. This madness can't be from illness, Ghirahim said. Your fever is broken at any rate. Speak. Tell us what has you so horrified that we may move on to more important matters. Kataki sobbed a few moments more. Then, gasping for breath, she forced herself to look up at Ghirahim. Mingled hurt and fear filled her gaze as she managed to push out the words. Secure. She's gone into labor. The healer... Sorry, your face. I just saw your face of shock, so...
She was pregnant like 12 pages ago.
I know, right? Sakura, she's gone into labor. The healers don't know if she'll survive. Sakura, Ghirahim gasped. His grip on Kataki tightened instinctively as the idea of any harm befalling her tore at his heart. The heart that no longer felt so imaginary. If anything, the idea of harm coming to Sakura made him suddenly have a heart, made it suddenly spring to life inside him and beat with an all-consuming anxiety, rage, and a need to be at her side as soon as he could. As soon as he dealt with the pathetic creature cowering in his grasp and trying vainly to pull away. Suddenly, the insanity of her words struck him, making him panic all the more. What did you do to her? Ghirahim snarled. I lay with her only a night ago. What you suggest is impossible. I didn't mean for it to go this way, Kataki cried. I meant only to use a revelation spell. Whatever for? Kataki whimpered. A few tears fell, and she trembled head to toe. Her knees buckled and she started to crumple, but Ghirahim grabbed and pinned her roughly against the wall. You will give me the answer behind your foolery. To see if she was pregnant, Kataki cried. I've seen the two of you. Kataki's body turned limp in Ghirahim's grasp. Ghirahim released her and let her fall into a heap of useless sobs. Pathetic, he muttered. Where is she? In your bedchamber, my lord. He threw a commanding glance at Komei, who, with a single nod, hurried on his heels as he made for his chambers. As he turned the corner into the hall housing his chambers, shrieks of pain erupted from his room while servants rushed in and out. Jumping up, he soared down the hall, but just as he reached the door, a gust of cold air blasted him back. Something slick formed beneath his feet, sending him sprawling. He looked up to see Kataki gliding with perfect grace along the carpet of ice she had just created. She slid right up to the door, blocking his path and crying, Why? Why not just let her and her bastard die? Why will you not lie with me anymore, but continue to lie with that whore? Ghirahim waved his hand and Kataki spiraled through the air. She slammed back against the wall and slouched down. She tried to stand, but she moaned and slid back to the ground. Ghirahim rose to his feet, towered over her, and declared, It is you who are the whore in every sense of the word. You will not disrespect the woman who will one day be my mother to my son and heir. Kataki gasped. Pain resonated deeply in her gaze, whether more so from his words or his attack, it was hard to say. Do not look at me as if my choosing her such a betrayal. Ever you wanted me for your own devices. Not once did you give a damn about my plans, else you would not have betrayed me in telling my secrets to your sister. But she is my sister, Kataki wailed, reaching for the edge of his cloak. Ghirahim yanked the cloak from her grasp and stepped back. Thus you have chosen, and thus I leave you. He waved his hand over her, healing her wound. Then he turned and walked toward the door. She scrambled to her feet, rushing to block the door again and grabbing his arm. He pulled away, but when she snatched at him again, he threw her to the ground once more. Do you understand nothing? He thundered. I am disgusted by you. Your time is through. Do not touch me again. I cannot promise to control my temper, and I will not promise to heal you again, no matter the threat of your sister's wrath. Now, out of my sight. He pushed her aside and reached for the door. Kataki clutched his arm again. Ghirahim, Out of my sight! Are you that stupid? Kataki flinched, but did not draw away. Rather, she stood tall, grounding her feet, as if she could truly bar him from entering. No, he said, wrenching his arm away. Not stupid, just that desperate. Out of my sight before I am tempted to kill you. Though in truth, what a pity that would be. You're not even worthy of death. You deserve to live in misery for whatever remains of your pathetic human life. Oh, wait. That's right. You have witch blood in you. I suppose that means you have plenty of time to regret what's been done here. Hundreds of years, in fact. I once knew a witch who saw 1,000. Kataki did not attempt to reach for him again. Instead, she fell into a heap of sobs. Pity, Ghirahim said as he touched the door handle. Your magic has true potential. I think tonight is the cleverest ice trick I've ever seen you use. Had you harnessed its potential instead of wasting your passions on frivolousness, you might have amounted to a decent sorceress, perhaps even more so than your sister. Now, if you'll excuse me, I must attend to my wife and celebrate the coming of my heir into this world. Sakura's screams erupted from within, overshadowing Kataki's sobs. Ghirahim braced himself, turned the handle, and stepped inside. And that, my good ladies and gentlemen, is the end of Chapter 9 of Demon Queen. Final thoughts, comments?
Action. Lots of action.
Lots of action?
Mm-hmm.
Any comments on what just happened there or anything early in the chapter?
For as evil as Ghirahim knows, he sometimes does nice, and it's kind of cute how much he cares for Sakura.
You think so?
Yeah.
Yeah? Has he grown on you? Do you like him yet?
No.
That's fair.
It doesn't matter.
That's fair. But yeah.
No.
Yeah.
He like hurts you and then he heals you.
I mean, Impa, like I said, just made that declaration that we don't really know if it's a prophecy or not, but do you think that he's going to walk in and Sakura's going to die? Do you think he's going to have his heir? What do you think's going to happen with that?
I hope she doesn't die.
Yeah?
I haven't thought about that.
Yeah. Any thoughts on what might come next?
Ganon will be born.
Okay.
It's weird that she's already pregnant. So it was the spell that made her pregnant?
No. So what happened was, so his prediction, first of all, is that Sakura is going to be give birth to Ganon, and that's how the cycle is going to start anew. Which timing-wise could make a lot of sense because Princess Zelda was just born. I mean, I think in the story, Ganon is older than her, but this is a fanfic, so ages can be off a little bit or whatever. You know what I mean? And that's fine. You know, fanfic, change things sometimes. But anyway, no. So what happened was, Ghirahim and Sakura, they slept together. Sakura felt like she was pregnant. Again, she has weird intuition, so that was probably true. Kataki went to do a revelation spell to find out if Sakura was pregnant. But what she's saying is that she either messed up the spell or cast the wrong spell that made this baby grow freakishly, to the point of 9 months in like one day. Now, one could make the argument, do you think that Kataki was truly sick? Or do you think that she stayed behind just to inspect what's going on with Sakura?
I didn't think she was really sick.
But that begs the question.
I was thinking that too, if she was staying behind for Sakura, but then I thought, well, maybe Sakura is coming with Ghirahim because she might be needed to read things at the temple.
Yeah.
But she didn't go. So that's when I was like, okay, well, then she stayed behind.
Yeah. Do you think that she really accidentally made this baby grow faster? Or do you think that she had plans to do something like, something harmful to Sakura all the time?
Harmful, and maybe just triggered everything.
Yeah. Well,
but if she's getting pregnant that fast, maybe Ganon also grows up fast, and that's why.
Maybe.
In the game.
Maybe. Well, to find all that out, tune in next time when we read Chapter 10. We only have 3 chapters plus an epilogue left. 10, 11, 12, and then we have an epilogue. Which tells me, do you think that we're really going to collect the spiritual stones and do everything you're supposed to do by then?
No.
Probably not. If we are following canon, obviously in Ocarina of Time, the stones are still where they are. So, that's not looking too great for him. But yeah, what's going to happen in these last chapters? What is Ghirahim's new plan? What is he going to try next? And what's going on with Sakura and this freakish fast-grown baby? So yeah, on that note, I think that's really all we have to say for now.
Yep.
Please join us for next week's reading. On that note, happy reading. May you be inspired, and we'll see you in our next video. Bye. Sorry, that's your face. Bye.
Goodbye.